All right, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, especially post the whole Jim Lill situation. So this whole preamp thing has the whole internet, you know, rolled up, and you know, it's reaching its kind of end, and I think everyone's probably had enough of hearing about it. But in this video, I'm going to address all of the amazing, sometimes positive, and then also sometimes less positive questions to my reply video, because this channel at its core is all about trying to answer the questions about analog gear, why we use it, and building the understanding that, be it hardware or software, the things that we use, they're just tools. And it's understanding why we have those tools in our studios, whether it be fancy preamps or just digital emulations of those, or just plugins designed simply to recreate the distortion characteristics of those. It's all a very important subject matter, especially to me and this channel, so let's get into it.
When we were searching for peace, God, what we want, but it ain't what we need. It's the reason that we're lost when we were
So it was a crazy week, and I want to sort of pull up some of the positive questions, some of the negative questions, and you know, we'll get amongst it. So, you know, I like to do things warts and all, and you know, first up I want to address one thing that I did make a bit of a mistake on. You know what, like, I have no problem ever addressing something that I might have gotten wrong. I consider this whole thing to be a lesson in learning for me as well. Like, any tests that I do on my channel are for my benefit as well as yours. So I do want to learn about my gear and how that relates to other stuff as well. Anyway, so this one from Domini, the DDF channel. Man, you have a great channel, by the way. He said, good video, but just a note, you are analyzing a non-linear signal when using plugin Doctor in linear mode. The Dirac spike doesn't work properly when you saturate it. You're not the only one to pull me up on that, and thank you to anyone that made that comment. You know, it's always good to learn how to use these tools. Once again, they're just tools, and plugin Doctor is just another tool at our disposal. Like, I'll be the first to admit, there are people a lot smarter than me, a lot more clever, and have studied far more intensely in the space of, you know, electrical engineering. In the case of electrical engineering, I am a hobbyist that is trying to learn as much as I can. So I build gear here on this channel. And so I do really, really appreciate comments like that try to explain things further. And if you're not sure what they're talking about, it's when I was analyzing, you know, the frequency response of the 73 preamps, and talking about like how things changed in saturation, and that's fine. It'd be great to get further clarification of some of you guys as well. But anyway, look, that's my like gray area, and yeah, thank you for, you know, bringing that up. I'll do more tests. Like, I'm super keen to do more tests and see more about how this is going. I'm going to put links down below to, once again, not just my videos, but some other amazing examples of what vintage preamps do to change color, saturate signals. There was a great one by Tim MCartney, an engineer from Australia, and there have been ongoing ones from Peterson, Goodwyn from DIYRE. I'll put links to them below. They're doing amazing examples of what these preamps do. There was also some great stuff from JJ Blair, and I'll put links to all that down below as well. This one from Nakala Studios. Can engineers tell when a record was made on a Neve, etc., just by hearing it? And then there was a reply from another user, Rocket Source. Can you hear the difference between a Strat and Telecaster? And I think it's important to address both those questions together, because that's exactly the point. It's not about whether you can hear the difference and know which preamp it is. We're using these as tools. So just to reiterate what I've always said on this channel, this gear, they're just tools, man. Like, we reach for the tool that does the job best. And if you have a Focusrite and that's the only tool you have at your disposal, that's fine. That's totally fine. But you do also, if you're in the camp of 2i2s are fine and that's enough, you do also have to understand there are better tools. There really are. And it might not just be about things like distortion or transformers. Come on, I'm going to show you exactly what some of the differences are on a vintage pre and why we use them. Okay, so let's talk preamps. First up, something that your 2i2 is definitely not going to have is impedance switching, okay? They might have an airband or something like that, but that's not the same. Impedance matching, 300 ohms, 1200 ohms, and then line if we need to take a line signal. This does change the tone that you get from your microphone. Okay, if you switch it down, for instance, on a 57 to 300 ohms, you'll get a different tone to 1200. What does it do? It kind of rolls off some highs, boosts the lows in an interesting way, makes the 57 sound fatter. Okay, it's just an easy thing to think of it as like a tone control. All right, just think of that as a built-in tone control. And if you're a guitarist, you know that impedance changing changes tone. Jim Lill said it doesn't do much. He's wrong. It changes heaps. The other thing we have is a polarity switch, okay? So let's have a look at these CAPI pre's, for instance. The reason why that's important for all our expensive, expensive, inverted commas, these aren't that expensive really, but whatever, is we need phase flip because say we do snare top and snare bottom on these pre's, well, I'm gonna need to make sure that my polarity is the correct term here. Sometimes it's called phase, sometimes it's called polarity, but they're two different things. We're talking about polarity here. So we want to flip the polarity so that the snare bottom matches the snare top. And how we check for that, in the case of a snare drum, we leave them out of phase. We move the mic until it's mostly as out of phase as possible, flip it, and then it'll be super, super in phase, and then your snare bottom will sound sick in tracking, and you don't have to flip it in post and check it. Then you check it right away in tracking. The other thing we have is, on these pre's, is a 48 volt phantom power switch. We need that individual phantom power per mic, not universal phantom power across multiple channels, which can ruin certain microphones. So that's what you pay for. And last but not least, on something like this preamp, the CAPIs, we have filters. We can filter 40, 80, or together 160 hertz. Why is that important? Well, why not just clean up your signal in tracking? All right, once again, we want to make things sound awesome in tracking. All right, and these are tools to help us get the best possible sound in the recording phase. It's not about mixing, not for me anyway. It's about what do they do in tracking first and foremost. All right, that's before we even worry about mixing. The other thing is that now if we've got an external preamp, we can go into an external EQ and compressor, or compressor then EQ, okay? And why would we do that? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Over here, console. Same exact thing we expect to see, all right? Line switch, 48 volt phantom power individual, filters, polarity, okay? Super, super important. And for anyone going, well, why do I need that many channels? Well, if you're tracking bands, you need this many channels. If you're tracking live bands or live drums, you need lots and lots of channels, okay? More than just 8. Not for everything, but for the stuff I do, absolutely need these things. Whew. Okay, talking about external hardware. All right, so why would we want to use external hardware during tracking? Well, because once again, it's all about dialing in the sound in the tracking phase. The way I've tried to describe it many, many times, would you ever want to, and people will say yes, but would you ever want to just go, let's do all our guitars clean, DI, and then we'll add distortion later in the box and match that distortion later, okay? Imagine trying to do that for all your guitar takes. That's crazy. I wouldn't recommend anyone do that unless you're doing something like experimental, and by experimental, I don't mean experimental music. I just mean you're trying to do something different or whatever. And I know people have done this, but in a real world setting, when you need to dial tones in on the day, if you have a session muso or someone that needs to get a job done quickly, it's about getting the sound now, not going, oh, just hang on a second, artist. It sounds like this now, but we'll get it right later. You don't want the artist thinking that. You don't want them leaving the studio thinking, oh, I hope that sounds good once it's, been compressed or been saturated or whatever. You want them to hear it now in playback, either while tracking or, immediately post when they're just taking the headphones off, having a listen to the mix. You want people to go, oh man, that sounds awesome. And using compression and EQ in tracking does exactly that. You dial in the tone now, you get the vocal nice and compressed, not over compressed, all right? Maybe just 4 to 6 dB of compression if you're worried about over compressing. And I'll tell you now, there are engineers, including myself, who absolutely annihilate vocals in tracking where it suits, okay? This is not something you do all the time, but you can definitely, with the right compressors, hit 10 dB or more of compression in tracking, and you're not left with something that sounds unusable. You're left with something that sounds great and you can still compress even more and alter it later on, okay? Same goes for EQ. If you've got a great control room like this one, and you've got artists in the live room, your job here in the control room is to make the tracking sound as close to a record as possible. And the only way to do that is with the right mics, the right preamps, then EQ, and then even in some cases, the compression on the right, you know, tracks, maybe bass, maybe vocals, maybe room mics, whatever, okay? That is why we have this gear. It's to get things sounding good now, not later. And a 2i2, very simply, cannot do any of that. And that's the difference between why we have consoles, why we have, you know, expensive preamps, and they're not expensive. We'll get into that in a minute. None of my stuff is $5,000 per preamp, but we'll get into that. But yeah, that's why we have the gear, okay? And you don't have to have all this gear to make records. You do not have to have this gear, but if you're doing the kind of job I'm doing, like tracking artists all the time, bands, like live artists, bands, vocals that, like I get hip hop artists in. I don't have to have all this gear for hip hop, but you know what? It makes their vocals sound great. They deliver a better performance and everyone's happier at the end of the day. So that's why we have the gear. Anyway, now if you're stuck around this far, I should also mention, if you've got questions about this gear, why we use it, how we use it, I'm gonna start doing a weekly live stream every Monday in Australia time. It'll be 9 till 11 a.m. Sydney time. And that'll roughly be, you know, PM in, you know, USA, California time, you know, afternoon kind of ish. So I'll put times up here, what that'll equate to depending on where you are in the States, because I know a lot of you are over there. But I'm going to be doing a weekly live stream every Monday. It's going to be free at first. I'm toying with the idea of making it worth my while to do it regularly, maybe as a members thing, maybe a Patreon thing where people pay maybe $5 a month. I can't just do it for free forever, but I'll start doing it for free next week. And if you're interested in that, let me know in the comment sections down below, because I'm really interested to know how I can better serve the audio community. Honestly, like I just want to serve and help educate the aspiring audio community, in particular, the people who have all these great questions about how this gear works, why we have it, and all of that sort of stuff. Because for those of you who don't know or might be new to the channel, I was a teacher. I taught music and audio production for many years, and I'm still very, very passionate about the education side of music and audio production. So maybe this is a way that I can do a bit more of that again, because I do really love it, and I do think it's important for people to understand how this job really works in a real world context. Anyway, hit me up in the comment section down below. This is a great one from Guitar Corporate. And Guitar Corporate, you commented many, many times in many different threads on this video and the AudioBoi's podcast, but he spent $5K on preamps. How is he going to sleep tonight? Guitar Corporate, you mentioned this many times on many other comments as well. None of my preamps are $5,000, okay? The Jim Lill video, he mentioned that preamp is $5,000. And I think, you know, once again, talking about the context of the Jim Lill video, he is trying to get a reaction out of everyone. So saying a $500 preamp per se, like my ones over here, the Neves and stuff, they're only like $400 to $500. They're not $5,000. Saying a $500 preamp versus a $200 or $250 interface isn't as shocking as $5,000 versus $200. You know what I mean? So let's just hit that nail on the head kind of thing right away. My preamps don't cost that much. A lot of my gear doesn't cost that much. How I got most of this gear is either by building it myself, getting DIY kits from like CAPI, DIYRE, SoundSkulptor, and they were super affordable. They're a little bit more expensive than when I first bought them. I was getting them for like $300, $350 Australian, and building them, okay? And then what it cost me was my time, but I saved lots and lots of money because I also cannot afford $5,000 Neve preamps. Most engineers can't, okay? There are big studios, big engineers, they've got that gear, whatever. How they acquired it, whatever. But for me and a lot of newer studios, we don't have that kind of budget, all right? And our clients don't have that kind of budget. So we need to buy affordable stuff. And that's what this channel is all about. Like, The craziest thing about this Jim Lill thing and people coming at me about the price of things, my channel is about budget solutions. Like I've got Behringer gear over here that sounds excellent. The 73 Behringer Neve preamp, the 369, I use it all the time. I literally at NAMM 2026 had Grammy nominated producers coming up to me and going, hey man, I use the 369, it's sick. Like big producers. It's not about expensive, it's just about what sounds good, all right? And certain hardware sounds good and it doesn't have to be expensive, whatever. The other way I acquired a lot of gear for really cheap, I've done videos on this before, is by buying stuff that was broken or needed like certain repairs and snapping it up for cheap and repairing it myself. It's a really easy way to get hardware that's affordable, okay? That's it. That's all I'll say about that one. Okay, another more negative one. Whew. This is a rough one. This is from John Lemon. John Lemon, I've seen you pop up in the comments a bunch too. The problem here is that you're assuming these clowns are audio engineers and not just your average audiophiles. With a bit of extra cash to buy studio gear, they can LARP publicly with. If it reminds you of audiophiles, it's because they are audiophiles. They will always resort to the same old rebuttals, debates, same old pseudoscience, best ignored in my opinion. All right, cool. If you want to class people as engineers, we're certainly not electrical engineers if we're in the audio space. Some people are. There are definitely electrical engineers that are also in audio. I am not one of those people, but I do dabble in electrical work. I do basic repairs. I do build equipment, so I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous, you know what I mean? But I would never claim to know anything near what some people know in the industry, and especially not anyone making hardware. I don't have any like level of understanding the same as they do, and I'm talking about legends like Paul Wolf and like Rupert Neve himself, and you know, bloody and Peterson from DIYRE, and all those great people. My level of understanding is nowhere near theirs. But that's not the point. If you're talking about audio engineers like myself and saying that we just LARP, man, dude, I use this gear every day. I use it in tracking artists every day. I do this job. I live it. I breathe it. I've done it for years. Yeah, so that's, you know, that sucks that you feel that way, dude. But once again, if you want to see, and remember, I'm going to do this for free and we'll just see how we can make this all work. If you want to see this studio get used in real sessions, I'll be doing a live stream. I'll put the link to that below. I'm going to create it today. Yeah, and if you want to see how all this gear works, why I have it, jump on the live stream. John, I invite you, whatever, if your name's John, I invite you, come along, ask questions and enjoy seeing what we actually do in a real session. Yeah, and you can ask your questions there. But yeah, anyway, next one. This was Guitar Corporate again. Oh, buddy, you're getting some cool ones in here. I'll give you another one. You have to understand we're dealing with a person here who claims he can hear 1 dB difference in his room while not understanding if you can't hear 1 dB on good flat headphones, then your room is lying to you and that 1 dB becomes louder, quieter in your room because of standing waves. It's sickening to listen to people yap and yap about Jim being wrong and gasping for straws. This one I really wanted to address, and it's not to just, you know, single you out either personally or anything like that. It was just about the 1 dB thing. If you have a well-treated room, you can hear 1 dB, okay, on speakers. Good speakers, properly soundproofed, isolated room like this one with proper acoustic treatment, you can very easily hear a 1 dB difference. If you can't hear a 1 dB difference, you're right. It would be something wrong acoustically in your room. You're absolutely right about that. I didn't mention anything in my video about headphones, so I'm not sure where that part is coming from, but you can absolutely, and you should be, able to hear a 1 dB difference on any sound source when you boost or cut in a good room. That's what good rooms are for. That's why we design the rooms the way we do in this industry. Anyway, this one from Guy 18. 18? Yes. Jim's video is one of the rare cases when the reaction videos are way more valuable and informative than the original video. Yeah, in some ways I totally agree with that one, because without Jim's video, we wouldn't have gotten the JJ Blair stuff. We wouldn't have got the Peterson Goodwyn stuff. We wouldn't have gotten so many different people coming out and explaining their case for why they use stuff, what they hear when they use the gear, all that sort of stuff. So that is a really nice positive way to maybe have a take on this whole situation. So I appreciate that one. Thanks for the awesome comment. From Fernando, you addressed that preamp distortion is different between different models, but how? There is only so many ways to distort a signal, and guess what? All saturation can be created with a plugin. You don't need a preamp for that, which was Jim's point. I don't think that was entirely Jim's point. He does say at the end of his video, and this is something that I'm, readdressing a lot, is that he does say at the end of his video that the only way preamps distort or sound different, and I'm paraphrasing here, is if they're broken, right? He literally says that. And he's not joking, that's what he seems to believe. And the whole point of his video, people seem to, be, later on, kind of configuring what they think Jim's video is about. But he does say, people are going to be mad. It's very much a video designed to trigger people and create this kind of, divisive stuff. Let's be real about it, right? That video is designed to be divisive and split people into two camps. And I don't love that because, you can have someone that needs a 2i2 to do their job, and that's the perfect tool for their job, right? And that's fine. And then you can have someone that needs outboard gear, and that preamp is the right tool for their job. And both people can be right, all right? There's no, this is the only right answer, this is the only right answer. If you're in the camp of 2i2 is right and hardware is wrong and you're being lied to, you're simply missing the point. And that's what I'm trying to address in this video, okay, is that there's a reason for both. It's not cope. I hate when people, I hate when I see people write copium or cope in comments because that's just so lame and so old and passe. Man, no one's coping if we're just trying to explain why we use gear, right? It's a tool, man. It's just a tool that we use to do a job. It's that simple. And everyone can have the tool that they choose. That's the beauty of all this stuff. You can have clean preamps for clean things, less clean preamps for other things, and they both do the job they need to do. So getting back to the question, the saturation that you get from a preamp isn't going to be the same as what you get from a plugin, unless the plugin is very, very much designed exactly to do what the preamp does. And there are companies that do this. Obviously, they design like Slate and God, there's countless. Let's just, we don't have to name anyone. There's just so many countless saturation plugins out there. But the point, once again, is that you're dialing it in the tracking phase. And then that saturation's there, and you hit it with the compressor, and you hit it with some EQ. And in tracking, you're getting the tone now. And the compressor brings up that saturation. It all interrelates, and it all is about the right mic and the right gear and the right performance coming into that. And it's this whole thing that works together, and the artist gets that back in their headphones, and you get this interrelationship the same way you do when you play through a guitar amp with the distortion on, right? You feel it, you feel how hard you can push into it. It's the same with hardware in tracking a vocal or hitting a drum or whatever. It doesn't matter what instrument it is, you're pushing into that equipment. You get that feedback immediately through your headphones, and you hear it now. And the difference between software and hardware is that there's no latency, okay? There's no latency. You don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. You're getting the sound now, and people are going to say, well, I want everything clean. Cool. Have it clean. Use a clean preamp. That's fine. But we're talking about the use case, the tool for the use case of that. All right, of getting a tone and a desired saturation now. And people want that on recordings. Doesn't matter if you want it clean. If you want your recordings all clean, cool, do it that way. That's up to you, that's your decision as an engineer. But that doesn't mean everyone wants that, okay? Once again, we can all be right for our own use cases, yeah? Anyway, next one. Oh, I loved this one. 0856010, no name. Anyway, numbers, cool. 16 microphones on drums, then a million question marks. Jesus Christ, I literally had to take a hydration break before continuing. Dude, you're on the wrong track if you're using a bucket load of mics on a drum kit. Just use an E-kit. No! What do you mean? Use an E-kit that then simulates 16 drum mics? Like, this isn't the only time I've had this question or comment. I've had a couple of people go, why are you using that many microphones on a drum kit? let's go back to the desk. Let's go back to the desk and I'll show you. Here we go. Kick in, all right? Kick out, sub kick, snare top, snare bottom, hats, 3 toms, ride, overhead, oh, crotch mic, then 2 overheads. So crotch mic is like an interest mic, 2 overheads. All right, we're already at 13 microphones just with that, and that's basic stuff. Do you need 3 kick mics? No, not necessarily. Maybe you don't need the sub kick. Maybe you don't need the kick out. Maybe you just need 2. But 2 or 3 is typical, okay? Especially when we have the luxury of it, why not use it? Mono room mic, that could also be stereo, all right? Stereo room mics, paired with a mono mic or a far, what we call the dining mic, when we throw a mic out in the dining room, okay? And then we have 2 closer room mics on these 2 channels. That is 16, all right? It adds up very, very quickly. This is what I would call bare minimum for my tracking. You know, we're not always gonna need a 3rd tom. We're not always gonna need the sub kick, all right? But we will often need the snare top and bottom, okay? We want an interest mic for fun, all right? You need overheads. Some people say, I don't need room mics. Cool, I do. I love them and they sound good. If you're saying just use an E-kit, okay? An E-kit is simulating that, all right? It has faders for room mics. It's simulating exactly that. Now, if I have a band come in, remember, I track real bands. Do you think they want to track on an E-kit, or do you think they want to track on their kit or my kit and have it sound awesome and be real? Yeah, this isn't rocket science, man. It's just doing a job. Anyway, hopefully I answered that one. This one from RS type content. This one got me, man. I mean, I don't really care because at the end of the day, we're all going to die from a nuclear war. So does any of this matter at all at this point? Dude, if anyone knows this guy, we need to reach out and give him a hug. I know if you're from America, maybe it does actually feel that way. Or if you're from, you know, one of the countries that are dealing with America right now, you might feel that way. Things could be a bit negative, but maybe we all just need a big hug, right? Anyway, hope your day is feeling better today. This one from Amish 6 Stringer. I just found it insulting to claim that no mic manufacturer or engineer has ever actually run his test, referring to Jim Lill's test. There are plugins specifically made to test hardware. What do you think those plugins were made for? Exactly. Jim Lill had a very hot take, and this is probably part of what infuriated the audio community so much. A lot of people were like, why is everyone coping so hard, you know? The reason why a lot of people were outraged is because of the arrogance that Jim sort of portrayed in his video of saying, I'm the only one to have done these tests. And he does say that. He literally says, I'm the first person to do this, or, you know, in part of his videos, like, I'm gonna be the guy to do it, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, engineers have done these tests. We've done these tests. Like, I test my gear to hear what it's doing. I wanna know, is it actually doing something? We all test our gear, and very in particular, the engineers that design or recreate these famous circuits, like the people like Peterson Goodwyn, who's, you know, just donating his time to just show people what his equipment does. They test the gear, like they're trying to recreate what a Neve does. They're looking into what makes a Neve, you know, special as a tool. And then they're trying to make sure that their recreations have those sonic imprints and do that same thing, or do it in a way that suits a more modern engineer. Like the CAPI stuff is designed very specifically to do more than what the API stuff did back in the day. It's got extra features so that we have things we need in a modern studio. These dudes do lots and lots of testing. Jeff Steiger from CAPI does heaps. Like, he's got so much stuff on the testing he does. To think that no one does this, like test their gear, or just be as arrogant to just say something off the cuff like that, it's a bit disrespectful. Anyway, I think that's why a lot of people got pretty infuriated by it. Anyway, 16 mics on a drum kit. Good luck with that. Already answered it. Thanks, Hallie. Something Bunyip. Dean Hutton meets Anton LaVey. I know who Anton LaVey is. Famous Satanist dude or whatever. Yeah, I mean, the beard probably gets me there. I'm not as fat though. Am I going to hell now? I don't know, whatever. Dean Hutton, I think you might be talking about like the science guy. He's like a science dude or something. I don't know. I'll put a photo up. All guys that are bald with a beard look the same, right? The amount of times I've been told I look like someone because they're bald and have a beard. Cheers, man. Good one. This one, Ricardo Menegasso. In my opinion, a good preamplifier is a device that delivers an output signal with greater amplitude than the input signal while respecting the impedance requirements on both sides and altering the input signal's characteristics as little as possible, except for the amplitude, of course. That said, I consider the Neve 1073 a poor amplifier because it introduces equalization, dynamics, saturation elements to the original signal, things I believe fall outside the scope of a preamplifier's function. There are dedicated units designed to add equalization, dynamics, or saturation, perform these tasks in a far more controlled and competent manner. Yeah, if you want to record clean, there are much cleaner preamps. But you know what's boring, man? You know what's boring? Clean. Clean is boring. It's boring, and if you record everything clean and then you need to saturate later to make it sound interesting, which is what's going to happen on things like rock and pop and R&B and all this kind of stuff, you're going to spend ages dialing in the saturation. And even if it's a preset you got to put on and you got to find that plugin and put a preset in, whatever, even if it's in your template, you got to turn it on. You know what's easier? Just doing it in tracking. While you're there with the artist, get a vibe, dial it in, make the choice. There's this thing that happens right now because of digital where people are too scared to make a decision on what the tone of something's going to be. It's decision paralysis, right? Where, oh, I'll just use this now because what if I want to change it later? Fuck that shit, all right? I'm going to say it right now. Fuck that shit, all right? There are times to be safe, record things clean, whatever. If you're doing jazz or orchestral stuff or certain stuff, you know, even in pop or whatever where you might want things cleaner, right? But if you know this is going to be a gritty fucking hip hop record, go hard. Smash it through an 1176 and a 1073. Smash it through a distressor. If it's a heavy rock vocal, take that SM7B, put it through a Neve, put it through a distressor and dial it in now. Don't, you know, be scared to make decisions of the tonality and the saturation on your music now. Your artist will appreciate it if you make the right decision. And if you're scared and you're not sure what decision to make, well then you've got learning to do, because there's a right place and a right time to dial those things in, and you can do that when you know it's the right time, and that comes with experience as an engineer. And you know how you get that experience? By making mistakes. And if you never make a mistake, you're never going to learn, and that is true of every job. Let's just clear that up, all right? It's okay to make mistakes. The beauty of analog in some ways is that you can over-compress a little bit and get away with it. I find that if you do hit a compressor a bit hard, it's not a big deal. You can also split the signal and do other things if you want through mults, whatever, but definitely like the amount of times I compress a vocal in tracking and have never needed to worry about it. It's our job as engineers to make those decisions in tracking, make the right decision for the recording, have redundancies if we need them, all right, to go back to if we make a mistake, all right? But if we're dialing in the tone, that's how records are made. You make the decision now. End of story. Had a bunch of positive ones. Brian Penny Music, thank you for making this. Thank you. Daily Remedy, thanks and great response. Hope you guys get to have a discussion. Really good post from Jason Martin. Thanks, Jason. The Studio Visitor, awesome explanation. Thank you. This was in a reply to someone else. What's funny in the videos where someone has posted samples of audio where the difference is obvious, people are asking for measurements. And in this video, where there are loads of measurements, people are asking for sound examples. Exactly. Thank you, Mortza Evie, whatever your name is. Sorry if it's a mispronunciation of your actual name. I've got that so much in the comments, just goalpost moving. I posted evidence in this as best as I could that they were the tests that Jim Lill asked for. So I did them, right? I did them. I tried my best to cover as many things that I found discrepancies with in his video, like impedance. Once again, I did, could have done better on the harmonic analysis and frequency response stuff, whatever. But I did also put audio examples in the links. I said that very early on, and I pinned the comments at the top. This whole channel has audio examples of preamp tests and live streams where we tested out different Neve pre's and shootouts between different preamps like Neves and APIs. I've done countless tests on this channel. showing what preamps do. I've done so many. I say countless, but there's, you know, it's probably very countable. I've done lots, okay? I've done lots of tests. And I did find that as soon as I provided anyone with real evidence or great sound examples, like the ones like from Tim MCartney, generally no one responded after that. There was never a response back. And if there was, one in particular was, well, that's not impressive to me. Well, so, like, maybe it's not impressive enough to you, but you could obviously hear that there was a difference, and I feel it's very disingenuous otherwise. One more, let's go. I think that's it maybe, actually. This Shokashiro, then test it. Record examples just like Jim did and post them. Until you do, you just have a theory with absolutely no empirical evidence. Once again, we've tested gear. There's heaps of people out there testing gear. They were doing it before the Jim Lill video. They will do it after the Jim Lill video. There will always be audio examples on my channel and many others. If you need to educate yourself and you need to hear examples, please approach it with an open mind. Not this divisive, I'm in the 2i2 camp or I'm in the hardware camp or whatever. Just have an open mind. Understand that these are tools, man. These are just tools for a job. The same way a carpenter uses, you know, a certain type of hammer or nail gun or sander, the same way a painter might use an expensive brush over a really cheap one, all right? We have expensive tools in our industry that are designed, and I say expensive, but I really mean, you know, more expensive than a 2i2. Like, some of this stuff's quite affordable. Let's just go back to, say, a Neve preamp, a 1073 like the DIYRE. It's $400 USD, and I've said this so many times. If you're a tradesperson, the amount of money you would have to spend on tools is in the thousands, okay? So let's be real. If you're serious about being a tracking engineer in the recording industry, not mixing, we're not talking about mixing here, you can mix all in the box if you want. But if you're gonna track real artists with real tools and get the best possible results, don't you think that maybe a better tool for you or for the artist might be worth that money spent? Don't you think that maybe the artist feels like they should have, you know, the best tools used on their production? Okay, of course they do. Artists come to real studios with real gear for a reason. Does that mean you can't still make good records on a 2i2? Of course you can make good records on a 2i2. All right, no one's saying that. But having good gear, good tools, definitely makes our job easier. As I said at the top of the video, if you want to join the live streams, I'm gonna start them next Monday, okay? We're gonna do live streams every Monday for a couple of hours, no matter what I'm doing. It might be mixing, it might be tracking. The first one, we'll do a tracking session, and we'll show how this gear works. And if you're interested in that, throw a comment below on what you want to see in those sessions, or come along to the sessions and have some input. Like, I want this to be a back and forth between myself and you, the audience, and you can ask me anything about any of the gear I have here or how I use it, and you can request to see it used a certain way. Maybe you want to see vocal tracking sessions and how we use hardware for that. Maybe you want to see drums. Maybe whatever you guys want to see, I'm going to try and facilitate that. I want it to be a very open and friendly and honest platform to talk about these things and educate ourselves, okay? Because as I said before, this isn't just about me educating you or anyone else out there. It is about us all educating each other and learning together, right? Like, that is what this is about. So thank you to anyone that, you know, kept it positive. I found it hard to stay positive on a lot of this stuff for a little bit, but yeah. Anyway, I tried my best, and hopefully I've answered some questions. Hopefully I've put out some actual positive feedback and some knowledge to all of you. If you like this content, make sure you hit like and subscribe. If you want to reach out to me, you can comment below, but it's best to hit me up over on Instagram at the DIY Recording Studio. It's just easier to DM me there, or you can email me at Mitch at thediyrecordingstudio.com. Hopefully I'll see you on the new live stream next week. I'm Mitch from the DIYrecordingstudio.com. I'll catch you soon.
I'm live, fuck the whinging, bitching like you the poor guy. You talk like you've had nothing that's considered a poor lie. So rise from trying to look like the staunch guy, but you don't need a put on